you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are back to do another in-theater review. This is the first of a very busy season for us because Fuego and I are about to embark on the 2021 Phoenix Film Festival / International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival, which is the portion of the festival that we are the most interested in, although Fuego is going to sneak in some of the other movies as well for Infuegotainment, which I don't blame him at all, because this is our opportunity to watch those movies that you guys will be able to watch probably 6 months to a year down the line once they are actually distributed by, you know, the big people, or A24 even.
A24, IFC Midnight. I mean, those are some of the most prominent as far as, you know, the type of indie horror that we see at IHSFF. Shout out to Monty. Had a great chat with him. That's also on the channel up recently, too. So.
Absolutely, yep. So you guys can go and find out. We did almost an hour-long discussion about all the horror movies we're going to be watching this year, and we are excited about them. That is all starting tomorrow, but today we are reviewing what, Fuego?
We're going to be talking about the very peculiar sequel, Don't Breathe 2.
Yes, the sequel to the 2016 feature Don't Breathe, which was a really successful Fede Alvarez feature, where
Indeed.
it was his, not necessarily follow-up to Evil Dead, but it was, you know, the next big thing that came out from him that caught everyone's attention, and it was a well-received movie. And now we have a sequel where they have flipped the script, so to speak. And
seriously,
Fuego, there's a bit of story behind that regarding who they got to star in it, right?
Indeed, yeah. So I always forget if it's Jane Levy, but
I think it's Levy, but who knows?
Levy. Yeah, but she was also our lead in Evil Dead, the remake that Fede, put together, and that has really grown on me over the years. When I saw that
Love
film
it.
initially,
I still need to watch the uncut version, but yeah.
Yep, which I imported, and I didn't really notice that much more gore, but I have grown to appreciate that film so much more because, you know, upon the initial viewing, I was like, oh, I missed the comedy of Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, but, you know, that's aside from the point. She was the star alongside Stephen Lang, and she escapes at the end of that first film, and you have the little post-credits where he is after her, and yet she decided she did not want to do the sequel, which they initially put into development, I believe, shortly after the success of the first one. And since she wasn't a part of it, they did a drastic reworking of the script, and we ended up with what we saw tonight, which I'm sure
Taken
is very
4.
different than what they were initially intending.
So we'll do this review like we do our normal reviews, which is we'll talk about our overall thoughts, then we'll talk about the story, the acting, the effects, all that good stuff in turn. We'll keep it all non-spoilery, of course, in case you're interested enough to go and watch it. But the overall thoughts for me is that this movie sits in and amongst the Man on Fires, the Takens, all those where it's someone trying to recover and or protect someone else, someone with a dark past. The problem is they made it a Don't Breathe movie, and they made it the villain from the first film. So everything in the film feels super incongruous if you've watched the first movie. If you've never seen the first movie and you go into Don't Breathe 2 blind, I guarantee when you watch the first movie, you're going to have a shock coming to you. Like, that's the weird thing about it, right? Like, this movie could very well stand on its own as a fun, gore-filled version of the Taken movies. But we know the character that we're playing with, and he doesn't deserve that sort of reverence. So it does, right out the gate, if you've seen the first movie, this movie puts you in a very weird position through the entire thing. Like, it wants you to root for the guy that was turkey basting women last movie. You know what I mean? So yes, I agree with you. It struck me totally weirdly. Like, on one hand, it's a very competently made, well done, standard revenge movie. On the other hand, it's this despicable character from the first film that suddenly I'm supposed to be rooting for. Like, it's such an off-kilter experience, and I don't know how else to describe it. So, Fuego, why don't you jump in on your thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a nicely made movie too, you know.
Yeah,
and,
very.
you
Yeah,
know,
the cinematography is definitely worth a discussion, which we'll get to.
indeed. Yeah, I mean, some of the shot selections and a lot of the camera movement, especially during a tense scene early in the first act of the film where there's no dialogue and this young girl is running throughout the house. I mean, yeah, I felt on edge, but the weirdest thing is that Don't Breathe, especially with its script, the original film being, it felt very unique, whereas this one felt a lot more generic.
Yeah.
And like it could have been retrofitted from another script, you know, with all the comparisons you made to, you know, Taking a Man on Fire and stuff like that. But the reason that I don't think that it was is because Fetty, even though he doesn't direct this one, it's I'm trying to look at his name, Rodo Sayaguez, but that's the guy who he's also a producer on the previous film, directs this one, and they both wrote the original film script together and this one together. So it is getting the band back together of sorts, and yet I could not for the life of me divorce myself from my impressions of Stephen Lang's character in the first film. I just could not do it.
I feel like they must have made good friends with Stephen Lang. Not to cut you off, I know everyone hates it when I do
fine.
this, but I feel like Fetty made good friends with Stephen Lang, and like Stephen Lang, when Jane Levy didn't reprise her role, he was like, why don't we try something different here? You know, let's maybe make me an anti-hero.
How about we do the Negan thing with you, which is
Right.
what this reminded me very much of.
You know what? That's
The
not
whole
a bad
redemption
comparison
aspect
at all. That's not a bad comparison at all. Yeah, this was a dude that is irredeemable, but on some layer he knows that he's irredeemable. And
it is addressed in the film.
Right,
You know,
right.
I mean, briefly, but
Right.
still.
So, yeah, I mean, overall, though, Fuego, if you had to boil down your thoughts?
I gave it 3 out of 5 on
Okay.
on Letterboxd, you know, because I was impressed with how much more grisly and gory it was with the previous one. It did approach in that sequel aspect of higher body count, and yet I don't know, it had so much that I was surprised by in some aspects, especially a certain revelation in the second act and where they veered into what they were doing. I
was
appreciate
intrigued by it. Yeah, I agree.
I thought that was solid storytelling.
I was like, they're
Stephen
gonna
Lang in
have
some
to
ways
do
felt
some
out of place,
flips.
you know?
And, sorry, I stepped on you, and
No,
I know
you're
the
good, you're
viewers
good.
hate it, but
Yeah.
it felt like, yeah, it's not like the script had to do, you know, the Summer Olympics tumbling routine to make it work. It actually made sense, you know? It was like, okay, if you're gonna anti-hero this guy, you know, the reasoning behind everything as it unfolds, it does make sense, and especially when you get to the third act where you see what the actual motivations are, you're like, oh, now I do actually want the blind man to win. Like, it's really interesting, and like the movie does its job as far as that goes, you know?
And-
like, it's such a weird thing.
And that's where I feel conflicted because of the fact that I did enjoy this movie. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it, and the fact that it did do some things that I wasn't anticipating.
It's not the best, it's not the deepest, and
No, not at all.
it does completely go against what characters were doing in the last movie, but it was still entertaining.
Yeah, indeed. And the big thing as we segue into story that I would at least sum up what they did with this compared to the previous film is, in the previous film, Jane Levy and her couple thieves, they were not good people. They were bad people, but Stephen Lang's character was a worse person. In
Right.
this one, Stephen Lang is still a bad person, but he encounters people in this one that are way worse than him.
Right.
You know? And so I guess I can
Or
give
at
them
least
credit for-
you think so, and then you find out, like, the truth of it. Like, there was a reveal that happened in the second act that I was like, oh wow. Like, I didn't expect that, you know, this thing right here. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? That reveal, I was like,
the hair.
you know what's really funny, by the way? My daughter Arwen has that. She has a white streak that she was born with right at the front of her head.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I was like very keyed in to this daughter character, like very keyed in.
And I can't wait to talk about her once we get to acting because she was the standout of the film for me.
And okay, I'm glad we're gonna have a discussion about it. So story-wise, Fuego, why don't you go ahead and break it down for everyone?
So essentially, Stephen Lang's character, the villain from the first film, he has rescued this girl that escaped a burning building that was right adjacent to his home. And so you see
rescued?
that rescued,
We don't know.
but
We don't
that's
know.
the-
We
well,
don't know.
she was like in the street and incapacitated and hurt, and so he rescues her without getting into major details. But then it fast forwards 8 years, and he's trying to toughen her up. He is trying to kind of mold her, so to speak, but he also has kept her
Make
very
her strong.
sheltered.
He's trying to make her strong and survive.
Indeed, but he's also kept her kind of hidden away and sheltered, and with obvious reason, because of the fact that she is not his daughter, and there would be authorities wondering, whose daughter she was and where she came from, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot we can't really say without spoiling this film, but she does have a change of heart one day when Stephen Lang is selling his plants that he grows to this woman who urges him to give her more freedom and to give her a chance to, interact with other kids and stuff like that. And you can tell she's even conflicted about it. This girl, she longs for more than just being stuck in this home with Stephen Lang. And he has this, regression, and he's like, okay, you can go out, make sure you're home by sundown, so on. And when she is out and about, she stops by what she knows to be her parents' home, and it's the one that burned down. And then she is basically spotted, and this is one of those
you know what? Just to
fairly
interrupt,
an inconvenience moments.
just to interrupt real quick, they played that scene very much like a great horror movie, right? Where she goes there and she hears something, and it's getting closer and closer, and she burns rubber to get out of there because she's a kid and freaked out. But it plays into it story-wise. Like, I really fucking... Scary. Well, no, but again, without spoiling anything, that moment of tension is played upon later on, and I really... it's just it was a really well-made movie about a character that I shouldn't have been rooting for. Like, it's so strange in that, right? Like, I don't know if Fede should have just started a new series or what, but... it's weird to utilize this character in this way, although it was successful.
Yeah, and he does, in a lot of aspects, for me at least, he took kind of a backseat in the second and the third act when those reveals that we hinted at took place, and when you find out what these very despicable, disgusting, horrible men that go after her without getting into it, man. And it's just... they are such scumbags in every possible capacity, and it's that was where the writing shined for me as far as the story goes. Was just pulling back the curtain and getting those reveals and finding out motivation, finding out connection. That was where the movie was at its best for me. And in those moments, Lang is kind of, as I said, taking a backseat, kind of incapacitated, trying to figure some things out. There's definitely a suspension of disbelief, check your brain in at the door with some of the stuff Lang's character is able to do, and I just was rolling my eyes a little bit.
From the very beginning, when he's walking home through the woods, I'm like, that's really easy for a blind man all of a sudden, but okay.
And even the way he dispatches some people with certain weapons like guns, and I mean, it was just so much more amplified than his abilities in the previous film. But then again, this is 8 years later, who knows how much more he could refine said skills, I don't know. But yeah, there was definitely, as my father always said, check your brain in at the door with a lot of the stuff they write him being able to do. So
no, I totally agree with that. Now, as far as the acting goes, though, I mean, you were alluding to it earlier, and we'll get to the little gem, but I thought Stephen Lang actually did a really good job. Again, if you buy into the story that they're telling, what's really great about his performance in this, in my opinion, is that he embodies a very feeble outward appearance to the girl, like with his voice especially. He talks kind of like this, like he doesn't really have a lot of oomph when he's exclaiming at times, but it is appropriate for this character that's been beaten down, and he's made the wrong choices, and he's possibly acknowledging that he's made the wrong choices at times. All he cares about now is protecting this innocent, and I actually give a lot of credit to Stephen Lang's performance in this movie. What about for you?
Oh yeah, I can definitely echo those sentiments. And since I didn't revisit the 2016 original
I didn't
before
either.
this,
I didn't either.
I've thought about it, so I can't recall how pronounced that like voice was, but
I can't
it was
either.
very apparent in this film. Just that feeble aspect that you mentioned, man. And isn't that what people do who have done a lot of shitty things in their lives? I mean, I'm not to get biblical, but the thief on the cross sort of thing, where repenting when you know the end is near for you, and having that sort of change of heart, and just rumination on your terrible ass behavior. So in some ways, I guess I can just understand this change within the character, and especially with the amount of time that's transpired in comparison with the
True.
end of the previous film. So yeah, people can change to a degree, but that doesn't mean that there isn't accountability for those terrible things that they've done either. And so yeah, I thought he was great. This band of villainous mofos, they were all just very skeevy, especially
Appropriately
when
shitty.
he
And you know what I liked? I liked the one, I don't know that he was specifically Mexican, but the one Hispanic part of the team that
agreed.
that had
He
an
was the only
arc.
one.
He literally had an arc, and I liked how that played out. Again, without spoiling
Agreed.
it
Very much
it was nice. It was surprising, and it was refreshing, is what it was. So
Yeah, and then the leader of the gang, so to speak, I thought he was solid too. And the other guys were, albeit one-dimensional to a degree, but they
Sure.
were venomous and nasty. I think they shot this in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where they shot the previous one too. It's at least where it takes place.
Yeah.
And so they embodied that grungy underbelly of druggy, dastardly sort of people. So,
Yeah.
so I thought they all played their parts well. But really, the standout is the young actress in this. She
That's the gem.
she impressed the hell out of me, man. And I've said it on the channel with you countless times. Whenever you have a terrific performance out of a youngster, whether it's I'll Take Your Dead or The Monster. I mean,
Yeah,
anytime
both
there's
super
a young
amazing
girl that just
performances.
brings so much breadth and depth and intensity to this, and she has quite the gamut that she has run through as far as the story goes in this, and everything that she has to endure, and she sells just about all of it. So
No, I agree. The problem is they leaned on her a lot. So she
Indeed.
had a lot to carry at times. And so at times it was drawn out so much where it was like, I might have seen through to the acting just a little bit at times with her.
and that's why I said just about everything.
Right,
you know,
right.
Because there was a moment or two where you
Okay,
can tell
good.
she's
So we're on the same
still
page.
young
then.
and
So I'm-
figuring it out. But
Exactly.
when she nailed it, she was so damn good.
Perfect. Yep. Same wavelength. Then we're totally in agreement on that. Now let's talk about the actual filming of the movie itself, the cinematography, the production design. I thought the cinematography was surprisingly good and surprisingly unique. There is a lot of interesting tracking shots where the camera will start here and then it'll glide up the stairs and move and end up somewhere else entirely on a different character, and then it'll do the same sort of thing. Like, there was a lot of really cool creative camera movements that necessitated CG transitions, but that the normal audience wouldn't have noticed. And I really enjoyed a lot of the camera work in this movie. What, Fuego, did you pick up on any of those things?
Oh, absolutely. That's why even in the overall impressions when we started this review up, I was like, the scene in particular when the initial invasion is going down and the camera starts down below on the first floor, and then it quickly speeds up and it zooms through those like the wooden bars.
Yeah,
and
into a whole nother room. Yeah.
And it blended the just practical environment with the bits of CGI that they obviously needed to get a shot like that. It did it oh so very well, and it looked seamless, and I thought it was great. I also enjoyed a lot of the shot selection. There's a lot of really weird overhead bits, that looked really cool, and I thought were effectively building tension. And yeah, this is a first-time director. So
Wow.
Once again, a buddy of Fetty's. He's also a producer on this Texas Chainsaw film that Fetty has coming out later this year, and he worked on the previous Don't Breathe and also co-wrote the script. Rolo, I believe, once again, is his name. And so, I mean, impressive stuff for a first-time director, and he's definitely on my radar for whatever he does in the future. And
Agreed.
yeah, tastefully done.
Was this his
Alvarez
first movie?
It was his first feature. Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well done him, man.
Indeed,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing. It's not a deep movie. It's
No,
not
particularly.
It's not
a very
an original
streamlined
movie.
Yeah.
It's definitely not what you would want necessarily in a sequel to what we got in the first movie, but it is a more than competently made film that has satisfactory violence and gore.
Yes.
If you can manage to get past the story issues because of where it's coming from and what it's trying to do with a character that is relatively irredeemable in the first film, if you can get through all of that, then you're gonna have a good time, and a surprisingly good time for me. And I gotta say, I did see the headlines of our friend Victor from Cult Classics review where he hated this movie. He's like, yeah, this is terrible, this is dumb, and it was stupid. Maybe, but it didn't make it a bad movie to me somehow. This is no worse off intelligence wise than the fucking Fast and Furious movies have been.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, and I've only watched a few of them, so I have no idea how dumb that franchise got in the course of its 9 or 10 movies or whatever. But I have seen thoughts, and so there are a lot of critics hating on this one. And just to backtrack to it, I think that even Monty, when we briefly discussed the film with him, he echoed a lot of those same sentiments, where he was like, it's just very weird what they do with this character, and I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to get past it if they were fans of the first film. So I can understand that, but I found enough merit in everything else that was done in this. And I mean, if we're gonna jump into like gore and practical and stuff like that, this film, I thought, whereas the previous one relied a lot more on the thriller sort of aspect and the tension of hiding and sneaking around and stuff, this one was so much bloodier, and there's people getting burned up, bludgeoned with hammers, I mean, throats slashed, all kinds of different stuff, and
the jaw separation was badass.
Yeah, it was a grisly and gory movie, significantly more so than the previous one.
But that's what held my attention.
Sort of stuff, it upped the enjoyment factor. I'm not gonna lie. The carnage candy, as they say. So.
No, for me too. So yeah, guys. I mean, ultimately, it's a weird one. If you can justify in your mind, if you can reconcile in your own brain the fact that this is a despicable character from the first movie that they're now trying to redeem with this movie in a very Taken sense, then give it a try. If that seems too far-fetched and you're never going to be able to buy into it because of how big Taken has gotten and all that good stuff, then that's understandable as well. But as someone that understands how big and crazy Taken has gotten and how bad some of these other movies can be, this is actually a quality Taken-esque film if you can get past the character changes and motivations and evolutions, whether they be earned or not.
Yeah, there's stakes, there's surprises, and it's a very well-made film. And I have to circle back to the Negan thing. If you were never going to be able to look at Jeffrey Dean Morgan after bashing in Abraham and Glenn, I mean, I still feel conflicted about that, because I have grown to really enjoy his character and his performance on the show. And I know they did the same thing in the comics, right? So it's, I don't know, you can't be redeemed, but you can attempt to atone, I suppose, to some degree. So.
Yeah, I suppose so. So, yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much where we're going to go ahead and call this one without spoiling anything. I think we've covered everything that we needed to. So, if you've seen it, why don't you let us know in the comments down below in a non-spoilery fashion what your thoughts are. If you are not inclined to watch it after our review, let us know that as well. We'd be curious to know any and all thoughts regarding this film. Thank you so much to Fuego for joining me for this venture. Obviously, Fuego is here most times to make sure that we are up to date on all the recent releases, and we're, as I said at the beginning, about to embark on the 2021 Phoenix Film Festival and International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival. So there's going to be a lot of coverage coming at you in some way, shape, or form in the near future, and we appreciate you guys being there along for the ride with us. So if you take your time and or money to go and watch Don't Breathe 2, make sure you come back and let us know what your thoughts are in those comments down below.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ultimately worth the theatrical experience, but
no, absolutely not worth going to
I don't
the theater
think so either
in this Delta variant era.
Yeah, but still very much worth watching once it's available at home, whether it's VOD or finally drops on a streaming service or whatever. I think if you've watched the first film, you need to at least see what they do with this, because once again, it's strange, and yet I didn't think I was going to like it, and yet I did. Didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. So
yeah,
there you go.
I agree. So we're on the same page on this one, Fuego. Guys, why don't you let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel directly the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Guys, if you didn't know, not only do we do our horror movie reviews and commentaries and all that stuff in accordance with our Patreon requests, but I also have been starting to drop Patreon exclusive tidbits for videos that are coming way down the line, like some of our horror comedy sketches. So it's worth your time to go and pay at least $1 a month to go and check out these special tidbits ahead of time. So thanks so much for watching. Again, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay
Stay
scared.
scared.